Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Rob and I talk about high-end collectible comics and comics art. Subscribe if that's your kind of thing. Let's talk about comics, and I post 1 or 2 videos a week doing just that. This week I'm recapping the recently closed ComicConnnect Event Auction number 63. This was mostly about the True North collection and the kind of weird collection of books it had. They were great books, but they were also like PGX books and these like incredible looking restored CBCS books. And there were a lot of question about the values on some of those. And then there were just a bunch of like incredible straightforward books that were CGC graded and whatever. The collection was absolutely fascinating and should be applauded. But the results are in, so let's take a look. And like I said, True North collection was the heart of this event auction. And I talked about it in the intro. Basically, any key you wanted was in here. So there you go. And let's just take a look at the books. I'm going to start with a couple monster results, what I feel like are monster results. Detective Comics number 27, first appearance of Batman, the Batman. CGC 8.5, restored, moderate restoration, color touch, pieces added, tear seals, cleaned, reinforced. I think this is a big result. $520,000 for a restored book is just a big number. And the last 8.5 sold for $242,000. Now that's 2018, but still, that's half of this, less than half. I mean, it's a big jump in 7 years. So, and before that, 2012, so 13 years ago, a copy sold for $130,000. There was a period where like we were trying to figure out like when a restored book would sell for over $100,000, and now we're looking at restored books potentially selling for over $1 million. So that is fascinating. I think this is a great result. I've had a couple of videos in a row where I was like kind of bemoaning some high profile comics results, and this is not one. I think this is great. It's a lot of money for a restored book, but it's Detective Comics number 27, and what are you going to do? More Fun Comics number 73, Edgar Church, Mile High Pedigree, CGC 9.4, $460,000, $460,127.65 to be precise. That is a huge, big, gigantic number, and honestly, a number deserving of this book, right? Like this book should sell for a ton of money. It's got 2 major first appearances. It's from the Church collection. It really doesn't get any better than this. So, and yeah, so I've been hyping up this book for a long time. You know, I've talked about it a lot on the channel, and I've talked about how it's hurt by the cover, but it's gained by Aquaman and Green Arrow, Speedy. So crazy. And this book previously sold. So 2012, this book sold for $75,000. So this is not one of those kind of like not bad results. This is actually a great result for the consignor and changes the perception of More Fun Comics number 73, I think. And this book has gone up precipitously, right? So $75,000 in 2012, and it sold for $38,837.50 in 2009. Which is funny because that was the consignor took a bath in an old holder. It sold for $57,500 in 2006, and of course, so that consignor lost money when he sold it. But as I mentioned previously, it was of course in Nick Cage's collection. So Nick Cage owned all the coolest books, and he sold it for $33,350, which was actually a very healthy price in 2002. So it's had an interesting life, and it started with Cage, and as you know, we know it. I mean, not started with Cage, but as we've been able to trace in its CGC holder, it started with Cage, and now it's sold for $450,000. Big money. Dave Cockrum, X-Men number 150 cover. This is a classic cover of my youth. $356,627.65, which is a big number for Cockrum. There's some other stuff earlier that I think would sell for more, but for his second time around on X-Men, that's a big number. Okay, here's the first of these kind of crazy, heavily restored CBCS books. I have no idea about these books. Like, they just seem so crazy to me. And I was wondering what the value would be and what they would sell for, because the number, 94 is like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then, well, what is it going to sell for? And so this book, CBCS 9.4, Marvel Comics number 1, It's got a lot of stuff. Moderate, extensive, professional. Moderate color touch on cover. Small amount of color touch on interior. Pieces added to cover. Interior cover and centerfold reinforced. Spine splits sealed. Tear seals to cover. Cover and staples cleaned. $96,600. So I talked a little bit about it in the preview for this, that there's a kind of a formula where if you want to like look at the value of a book, the fair value for a restored book is you kind of figure out what it would be before it was restored, and you pay that price, and anything north of that is kind of like gravy. And this particular book, not all of these kind of hyper restored books did poorly, but this one did. It didn't even make $100,000, and I don't think that there's any copy of Marvel Comics #1 right now that would sell for under $100,000. Here's another example. It's a 2.5 from ComicConnnect. CGC 2.5. There are pieces missing from the margin of pages 14 to 25. Slightly affects art. And this 2.5 sold for $293,250. Now, there's some benefit to that book because it's got interior damage, and we've talked about interior damage, but it's still a 2.5, and it sold for nearly $300,000. And we have this book in a near mint holder that sold for $96,000. I don't think you would get a 2.0. Let's say it's a 2.0 Marvel Comics #1 for $96,600. So that restoration definitely didn't add to the value of that book. Yeah, for some examples, in addition to this 2.5, which I think is a great comparable, a 3.0 sold for $223,200 in November of 2022. A conserved 2.0 sold for $156,000 in 2021. So, yeah, you're not going to find a copy of this book for under $100,000 unless it's in a CBCS 9.4 restored holder, apparently. In this case, it's basically a wash. Captain America Comics #1, CBCS near mint 9.4. In this, like I said, it's a wash. 2.0s are basically in the $100,000 to $150,000 range. And so even this one, which is reglossed, which I hate, is basically a wash based on kind of 2.0s. Marvel Comics #1, CGC Fine 6.0, $419,110.60. This book, also from the collection of Nicolas Cage, previously sold for $36,800 in 2002. I'm not sure if it sold in between, but this is what I've got for it. And if that is the case, then they had the joy of owning this book, and they made a pretty penny on it at the end of everything. So, and again, Cage had great books. Another one of these, CBCS near mint 9.4, Batman #1. Moderate, extensive, professional restoration. Moderate color touch and pieces added to cover. Pieces added to interior. Cover and centerfold reinforced. Spine splits sealed. Tear seals to cover. Cover cleaned. This is, again, kind of a wash. So if you look at the trend for low-grade Batman #1s over the past couple of years, you could have gotten as high as $180,000. But they're generally in the kind of like $84,000 to $144,000, $180,000. I mean, it's fine. So $121,900 is basically a wash for the restoration on that book. I was really interested in seeing what this one would do because it's extensive restoration, and it just looks ridiculous to see a 9.6 on the label of any Golden Age book, especially All-American 16. So this sold for $46,000. And in the same auction, a copy missing 9 wraps sold for half of that, $23,345. I think that, that kind of tells you the value that's been placed on that 9.6. Because there's 9 wraps missing on this book. It doesn't even have a grade, and it sold for just half of a 9.6 for $46,000 versus $23,345. So interesting. Okay, remember these? We're gonna talk about these PGX graded Marvel Mega Keys that fascinated me so much. I did a separate video on them, and yeah, it's gonna be interesting. You'll generally see that there's a 2-grade discrepancy between the grade on the PGX label and the price paid. I don't have comparables for everything, but it is interesting to take a look at. I liked this one. I think this is a good buy for whoever bought it. I do. I wouldn't have bought it. I'm not that bold, but if you're a gambling man and you have $69,000 to spare, this is not a bad one. Journey into Mystery, number 83. Stan Lee signature. PGX, I was going to say CGC. PGX 9.4. And like I said, I thought this was a pretty good looking book of all the books that I took a look at from PGX. And it sold for less than what a 9.0 would sell for. So you've got some leeway on this one to make your money back for sure. And I think this was if it's bold, it's a gamble, but I think it's a pretty good one. X-Men number 1, PGX 9.2, Stan Lee signature again, $48,300, which is what you would have to pay in this year for an 8.5. So again, it's 2 grades, right? So 9.2, 9.0, 8.5, like 2 levels down is the value you're paying for a PGX book, at least in this auction. As an aside, we have a bubble result that's going to take a while to work its way through the hobby. $150,000 in September 8th of 2021 for X-Men number 1, CGC 8.5. This is a double whammy. It's a PGX holder. PGX 9.2 Tales of Suspense 39, and it's a book that's definitely dipping. Even still, this one sold for $50,727.65. I don't have a comparable at that price point, but I do have a comparable at the grade, and this copy sold for $106,266. This CGC 9.2 copy sold for that in June of 2024. I hated this book. I thought this book was really pretty weak. Incredible Hulk number 1, PGX 7.5, $40,251.15, which is actually not terrible when you consider that a CGC graded copy at Heritage last month, like right around the same time, sold for $78,000 in CGC 7.5. So, I mean, it's not comparable, right? So $78,000 is bigger than $40,000, but it's not half. I'm grasping at straws. It's really pretty bad. But I still thought it would be worse. I mean, honestly, I thought it would be worse because I just thought that book was rough. Avengers number 1, PGX near mint minus 9.2. This is a pretty crummy result, I think. I mean, not that you would expect a great result from these PGX books, but $22,425. So for comparison, the Hulk 1 sold for half of what a comparable graded Hulk 1 would sell for. This sold for a third. So Avengers number 1, CGC 9.2 in an old holder sold for $66,000 in 2023, which is a bubble result, but still. Amazing Spider-Man number 1, PGX 8.0, $19,551.15. Compared that to a CGC version, again, in an old holder, CGC 8.0, Amazing Spider-Man number 1, $45,600. I'm still surprised by how well that Hulk number 1 did. Again, it's a Hulk number 1, so I mean there is that. They're tough. It's just a tough book. Here's one I'm interested in, obviously. Daredevil number 1, PGX 9.6, Stan Lee signature, $19,550. Maybe in 2012 there was a dip in Daredevil number 1s in 9.6, and they got to like $25,000. But even before that, they had sold for $35,000, $40,000 and stuff like that. It was never a $19,000 book, or hasn't been a $19,000 book for a long time. And I know this is a bubble result, but we have seen it sell for as much as $90,000 in 2022. So, and you know, the 9.8 sold for $360,000. So you would expect that, you know, a 9.6 would do a lot better than $19,000. But that one's in a PGX holder. All-Star Comics number 8, CBCS Near Mint Plus. Extensive Professional Restoration, another one of these 9.6s. This one sold for $35,651.15. The comparable here, and this makes this one look like a decent sale for the consigner. The comparison here is a copy sold last month, a 2.0 sold for $20,400 at Heritage in 2.0. So $35,000 is more than $20,000. So there's some lift actually on that book from the restoration, which has not always been the case, as you know, having watched this video. And after that set of up and down results, well, not really up and down. I guess it's as expected. The books from PGX didn't do great. The CBCS books that were heavily restored did kind of okay. And the really blue chip CGC graded stuff at the beginning blew the doors off, and we had some incredible results. That Detective 27, and first Aquaman, first Green Arrow, first Speedy just went through the roof. So that was very cool. But I wanted to share something that I didn't cover in the preview, but I just noticed. Mystery Men Comics number 6, CGC 9.6. Guess what pedigree? Edgar Church Mile High pedigree from the collection of John Burke. And yeah, just sharing this one, $32,775 for this classic John Burke owned Edgar Church Mile High copy of Mystery Men Comics number 6. So I just wanted to share it, tossing that one out there. And with that, we're done. That was a lot of fun. The True North collection was incredible. Just incredible material. Some of it didn't do great. Some of it did incredibly well. But it was all interesting to look at. And I learned a lot about PGX books. And I actually learned a lot about extensively restored CBCS books and how the market values them, which is not too strongly. But I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong. But that's what we've seen today. I've got a bunch of stuff coming up, and the biggest one coming up soon will be, there's an original art auction running at Heritage right now that I haven't previewed. I'm going to preview that with like kind of 5 or 10 lots, so that'll be a quick one to do. The November signature auction from Heritage is insane, and I have a short that I'm going to share shortly about one of the lots in that, which has just blown my mind. I have a couple of podcast episodes that are kind of in flight that I haven't released. I was away last week, so it kind of made it difficult to stay on target. And yeah, there's a ton of other stuff coming. As you know, I try to keep busy, and I always come up with ideas. So if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe, share with your friends. Drop a comment below what you think about some of these results. I think they're really interesting. I'm not quite sure what to make of all of them. And I love the comments here. And so yeah, I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.